Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, friends, faculty, supporters of the institution, dignitaries. Good morning, MBA class of 2014. Today is a day of celebration. We'd like to celebrate with you, and we'd like to have you listen to 4 major presentations reflecting why this day is so special. Before I introduce our first commencement speaker, allow me a few minutes for some closing comments from me, and also to express my gratitude to those that actually have made this class possible, this year possible. 11 months ago, most of us met for the first time, and we were setting on to a journey together. It was pretty uncertain, I think. You had the courage to leave positions, careers, stable environments and friends, and you came to push the envelope, acquire knowledge and skills, and seek out new opportunities. After 20 years of teaching in this program and having run a variety of in-company public programs for the school, I had just taken over the direction of the MBA program, and I came to change a lot. And I remember one of you in January, upon looking at the program that we've outlined, said and summarized, I think, the impression for most when he said, this is going to be a transition year. And it was a transition year for all of us, for you, but also for the faculty, for myself, definitely for the team that supported me. In 2013, we had benchmarked our MBA with those of other schools. We compared curricula and asked senior executives for inputs. We fine-tuned the recruiting requirements. We thought about new ways to showcase the MBAs in TED Talks and alumni events. We changed a lot, and we knew that we would have to be responding to things that we wouldn't even know anything about beforehand. We expected that we would be facing hiccups, and we just hoped that we would detect them faster than anyone else, and thank God it actually mostly worked out. And so this year became a transition year also for every member of IMD's administration and beyond, a reminder of the realities of change management and the meaning of professionalism and loyalty. This is why I'd like to take the opportunity here to express my appreciation to many of our colleagues that helped to deliver a truly outstanding year. They include IMB's restaurant staff and faculty, the cafeteria and facility management, as well as members of the President's Office. Looking at the MBA office, I want to thank particularly the recruiting team, Marine, Lucy, Mark, Simon, and Lisa, for having brought in a great 2014 class and for filling next year's class with a good set of candidates. I want to thank Claire and particularly Antonio for organizing career service events, and Janet, who had managed the program design and delivery for many years and was ready to help when asked. I would like to thank further, and particularly Regula, for keeping her cool when dealing with external suppliers for real estate agents to visa authorities. I'm indebted to Marcella for lending a helping hand to those that helped all of us and you the most, your spouses and partners. Finally, I want to thank Miriam and Sean for working with me, bringing in a range of interesting international consulting projects. I want to thank Julia for her outstanding initiative that put placement efforts into overdrive and delivered a top-class performance. I want to thank Gitte Marie for her contributions to recruiting and placement and for managing the content and logistics of various tricky projects from navigating the future to discovery of events. Last but not least, I'd like to thank Max. Some suspected him to be my son. Others think of him as the much younger, better-looking part of an odd couple. For obvious reasons, I prefer to think of him as a great colleague and a friend, someone who is very dedicated to the program. He nicely balances professional execution with creative destruction. He delivers the day-to-day, and he moves things forward. I thank you for his energy. For me, ladies and gentlemen, this year became a year of realizing the contribution made by previous MBA program directors and the broad and often personal challenges that are unique to this role. It also became a year of experiencing the risk of initiative, the power of the corridor, and the need for perspective. At the end of it, the faculty and the staff, we all hope we made some improvements to what has always been a solid and in many ways unique program. But to be sure, the uniqueness of this program is largely based on you. You, the 90 exceptional people, and I thought I would never even use that word, might have come to take classes to broaden your technical skills and business insights, to gain self-awareness, and even to calibrate your moral compass. The most important part of your schooling this year, however, would have come from your classmates. The 2040 MBA class combines roughly 640 years of prior work experience gained in more than 24 sectors around the globe. It's a group of individuals able to communicate in a total of 55 languages across wide-ranging topics from offshore analytics to zero-based budgeting. There's a collection of people with a strong desire to advance individually and a willingness to contribute to the learning of the group. I hope you value and protect the select network that you built, and I know you'll find friends for life. Thank you for the numerous contributions to the curriculum and outside. You all made this your program, and you have every right to be proud of it. Because of all these valuable inputs of yours, the class will be forgiven for smaller sins. For trying to use glib eloquence to weasel out of integrated exercises, for conducting spreadsheet wizardry to hide the obvious and confuse the faculty, and for condoning, and I should say enjoying, the ritual slaying of economic wisdoms on Fridays repetitorial, preferably done by French-German IT specialists. From now on, you will be no longer benefiting from our over-regulation, because we can no longer threaten you to lock the door for those who are notoriously late. But you're always welcome to come back to this institution, your alma mater, as friends, or better still as recruiters, ICP clients, and participants of our program. Either way, when you come, be sure to buy at a premium. I wish the best to you and your families. Make this a very special day. Thank you very much. Now let me introduce our first graduation speaker. Let me introduce him first. He doesn't want to have too much said about him, but I will do it anyway. A couple of years ago at a dinner party at Stuart Hamilton's home, Professor Bob Collins And I started talking about Pakistan. I had been to Pakistan on what turned out to be a kind of a life-changing backpacking tour in 2001. I had no idea that Bob had gone there for years prior to that and had been influential in developing a school called LUMS, the Lahore University of Management Science. To cut it short, Bob got me involved in joining the advisory board and the visiting committee of the school. And during my first trip to LUMS, at a dinner at the Vice Chancellor's home, a man came to me in a classical salwar kameez and a barber jacket. He talked to me about his experience just after World War II as a young man returning from the US to Pakistan and making a stopover in Frankfurt. He shared with me a very personal observation that he had made during a dinner at a US Army restaurant. An observation that for me captured the state of my home country just after the war. Anyway, I've met a few people in my life so far, but I was very impressed by what he said at that moment. His words left an impression on me that I will never forget. Since then, I had the fortune to meet him again on various occasions, and I thought it would be an honor to have him here at your graduation today. Our first speaker is widely recognized for his contribution to politics, business, and philanthropy. As former Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs of Pakistan, he endeavored to sort out the economy of a country with massive potential, but also fundamental structural and systemic challenges. As a businessman, he established, among others, Pakistan's largest paper and board company, Pakistan's largest food processing company. He set up IGI Insurance and IGI Investment Bank. As chairman, he supervised the operations of Sanofi Aventis, Siemens Engineering, and Coca-Cola in Pakistan. As an educator, he helped to establish LUMS in 1985, founded the Ali Institute of Education for Training Primary and Secondary School Teachers, and is a member of the board of a number of important educational institutions in Lahore. He's also the founding member of the Southeast Asia Initiative of Harvard University and a co-chair of the South Asia Center for Policy Studies. As a philanthropist, he is a member of the Leighton Rehmatullah Benevolent Fund in Karachi and the Shalimar Hospital in Lahore. His own foundation gives about $1 million a year primarily for education and health in Pakistan. He received numerous honors and awards from governments like Sweden, Netherlands, and OBE from Britain, and was awarded an honorary doctorate degree of law from McGill University in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome a man with a very sharp mind, a great sense of humor, a man who dislikes bureaucratic obstacles and is amused by pretentious people such as those that buy $50,000 Argentinian polo ponies but don't even know how to ride them. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Syed Baba Ali.
Professor Ralph. It's an honor to be here this morning. Professor Dominic Tobin, Professor Ralph Moschka, members of the faculty, graduating class, their parents, friends, and relatives. It's truly an honor to be here talking to the future leaders of business, not only of Europe, but from around the world, because I know in this class you have people, students with the graduating class who are from other continents also. I'll spend the next 10 minutes or so talking about some of the important decisions that I had the privilege to make, which really had an impact on my own life and hopefully on the life of others. Way back in 1956, I was privileged to set up a joint venture with a Swedish company called Auckland Rousing to set up a packaging plant in Pakistan. Auckland Rousing were the pioneers of modern packaging in Sweden, and they are the parent company out of which Tetra Pak has developed. And this was set up right in 1957, and it developed into a very successful venture. In 1965, the Rousing family saw a greater opportunity in developing Tetra Pak, which was their only development to which was concentrating on liquid food packaging. And they felt that they needed additional resources. They sold off the mother company, Auckland Rousing, to the Swedish Match Company, and decided to concentrate on Tetra Pak and develop that. Today, Tetra Pak, as you know, is the largest liquid food packaging company in the world, and their head office is maybe a kilometer from IMD here in Lausanne. Our relationship with the Rousing family, which started in 1955, continued throughout these years. And they were very keen to introduce Tetra Pak in Pakistan. They sent out their representative who canvassed the importance of liquid food, of milk packaging. That was their kind of concentration. But they could find no buyers because people in Pakistan who were interested in industry, they wanted to set up a textile mill or a cement factory or a sugar factory. For them to get involved in milk was something which was not really of interest to them. They thought this was the job of a milkman who delivers milk on the back of a bicycle at different homes. So I talked to the Rousing family, and I said the only way that we can introduce Tetra Pak in Pakistan is to set up our own milk processing plant. As you know, Tetra Pak's specialty was aseptic packing, which meant that once you put milk into a pack, you could keep it at ordinary temperature for as long as 3 months, and it would not be spoiled. Now, for 10 years we argued, and finally Hans Rousing, who was then the president of Tetra Pak, said, all right, we'll set up. He said, you know, it's against our principle to set up a plant where we'll be competing with our customers. I said, there is no customer, so let's put up the first plant to demonstrate in a country which has no milk industry at all that we should put it up. So we decided to have a joint venture, and I had the privilege of managing this. And it was an uphill task because there was no tradition of milk collection on a large scale. There was no packed milk being sold in the market, so you had to set up a milk collection system so that you could persuade the farmer that you didn't have to adulterate the milk to sell it, and you had to then set up chilling centers so that the milk, as soon as it leaves the udder, can be cooled down so that it doesn't spoil on its way to the factory. Well, anyway, to cut a long story short, we went through this learning process, and for 10 years I was able to run this company, and it was not a tremendous financial success, but it had an impact because for the first time a poor man was able to buy pure milk. Ordinarily, people who had their own cows or buffaloes could get milk, and because this was their own animal, there was purity of the product. But for the poor man who depended on the milkman, there was massive adulteration of this milk, and as a result of this new venture that we set up, for the first time, a poor man could get pure milk. Now, so I ran this company for about 10 years, and I was told by the marketing man that Nestle had sent out a representative, and they were asking a lot of questions as what we were doing. So I knew that, you know, there was a future in getting, in collaborating with a company like Nestle, because they had other products, and they had the brands, and they had the management skill. So I said, feed them all the information, but make sure that there's no exaggeration. Feed them the correct information. So a few weeks later, I got a message that Mr. Rudy Chan, who was the area in charge of Asia, wanted to come and see me. So I said, all right, you're most welcome, but don't bring him to my office straight away. Take him to the plant where we are processing the milk, take him to the area where we are collecting the milk, take him into the market, show him our own packaging company, and then bring him to our room so that I don't have to tell him anything that we are doing. So he said, I had seen everything, and he said, Nestle has decided to come to Pakistan. And they have two options. Either their first option would be if you would take them as a partner, and the second option would be to set up a greenfield project. I said, I'm looking for a partner. So he said, how can we come together? And I said, I control 80% of the shares because I knew Tetra Pak wanted to exit. Because meanwhile, since we put up this first plant, there was a whole rash of new milk processing plants coming up because the company had a success, and there was a kind of a rat race. Everybody wanted to get into milk processing. And so I said, I control 80% of the shares. You can have 40%. We will keep 40%. You run the company, and the price is what is on the stock exchange today. He nearly fell out of his chair. He said, I can't ask for anything more. Now, to know the price of the share at that time was 27 rupees, and the sales were about 370 million rupees. Today, this year, we will end up with sales of close to 85 billion rupees in 25 years. And the price of the share from 37 has gone up to 8,500 rupees. So it hasn't been a bad collaboration. What has happened over the years is that Tetra Pak today sells more packaged liquid food packaging in Pakistan with a population of less than 200 million than in India, which has a population of over 1 billion. And Nestle has the largest liquid milk packaging operation in the world in Pakistan. And both these companies are not very far from IMD. So I thought I'd narrate this example of taking a decision. And it literally took 15 minutes discussion with Mr. Rudy Shan to shake hands with him over this collaboration, which is now 25 years old, which has been a tremendous success. The other program which Professor Boschek just alluded to was setting up of the university. I had the privilege of attending the Advanced Management program at Harvard in 1973. They used to run that program for 13 weeks. It was a very intensive program, and we had about 160 people. There were two batches of 80, 90 back to back. And those 13 weeks really transformed me tremendously as a person. I had been managing this company, Packages Limited, for about 20 years before I went there, and I thought that I was cat's whiskers. And once you started sitting in the class, you knew that you were Mr. Nobody. But you also realized that there wasn't anybody else who was better than you. So there was quite a learning process. But when I came out after 13 weeks, I started sort of questioning myself that management development is a very important need for a country like Pakistan, and we should have an institute which could be replicated, which could be a kind of a poor man's or poor country's Harvard Business School. So I went around and talked to the business community in Pakistan, and they were very receptive to this idea. We had no problem in our own group of companies because we trained them up in a very proper way, and we had very good support from our foreign collaborators like Tetra Pak and Rousing to train our people. But I said, what about an ordinary person, businessman who has no opportunity to train his own managers? So we then went to Harvard. I made contact with the faculty there, and I said, please help us with setting up of a business school in Pakistan. And I must say, Professor Lou Wells and Jim Austin were very receptive to this idea, and they came out and laid out the blueprint of a business school. And then, of course, Professor Collins from IMD later on and helped us in developing this. This was about 30 years ago, and during this period,
this fledgling of a business school has developed into a full-fledged university called Lahore University of Management Sciences, LUMS for short. It today has 4,000 students. It has over 200 faculty internationally qualified. And we have in the 30 years graduated about 8,000 students who are now, our alumni are, about 1,000 of them are working in North America, 1,000 in the rest of the world, in Europe, Middle East, Far East, as far as New Zealand. And 8,000 are in the country, and they are now, all in the last couple of decades, going up the ladder, and many of them are managing multinationals and pretty successful Pakistani companies. What it has provided is an opportunity for the ordinary person to really makes a difference to his life. And within LUMS, we have started another project. You see, Pakistan is a country where you have a tremendous diversity of incomes, people from well-to-do families and also people who are really at the bottom of the pyramid. And we have started a program about 10 years ago where we seek out very bright kids who have done their, we have identified schools that have very good matriculation results. And we go and talk to the teachers to identify their very bright students, and we work with them for about 2 years before they are able to take our entrance examination. And and we start with a pool of about 7,000 every year, and we boil it down to 500, and we bring these 500 students to our campus for about a month for intensive coaching to encourage them to apply to take our entrance examination, and if they qualify, then we take care of them. In all, we today have about 313 such students, which is about 8 to 9% of our total student population, who come from the bottom of the pyramid. And such over 300 students have graduated, and these bright kids, many of them have qualified to go to the best universities of the world for their master's and PhD program. And it makes a difference not only to the lives of the family, but to the lives of the village they come from, and to the lives of the town they come from, because we find that every year, if you get a person from a particular village, next year at least there are 2 candidates coming up. So there's a sort of a snowballing effect. And to me, this really is making a tremendous difference in upgrading the quality of life of these individuals. So I thought I'd just share these 2 examples of the initiative that we have taken to make a small difference in the economy and the lives of the people of Pakistan. And it all goes back to education. I had the privilege of having had a good education, going to the Harvard Business School, and also I spent the last 50 years of my working life talking to people who knew more than me. And there is a tremendous amount of learning, not only in the classroom, but interacting with people and trying to learn from them, for which I'm extremely grateful. I would like to congratulate the graduating class and to wish them well. Their learning will not stop with your getting your degree today. Your learning is a lifelong commitment to keep on improving yourself. At the age of 88, I still want to learn and improve myself, and that is something that I would like to leave with you. Thank you very much.
Much for this great. Our next speaker, we have a second co-location speaker, is a little more homegrown, if I can say that. Actually, it's not quite true. He is British, but he has an MBA from IMD from 1999. During his distinguished career, he has beaten the odds on numerous occasions and has all along stayed very loyal to the Institute. He started his career patrolling the streets of Northern Ireland as a British Army captain engaged in counter-terrorist operations. From here, he went on to lead newspaper distribution businesses in London. Upon graduating from IMD, he joined the luxury goods conglomerate LVMH in strategy and business development, distinguished himself by turning around an old cognac company, Thomas Heinz, and by revitalizing one of the world's finest champagne brands, Krug. His decade at LVMH was capped by 5 years as president and CEO of the New York-based Moët Hennessy, United States. Despite enjoying the range of challenges at LVMH, he followed his entrepreneurial calling in 2011 and joined as CEO and part owner the Monaco-based Edmonton company, a privately held company that is recognized as a global leader in sales, charters, and management of super yachts. In July 2013, he joined Sotheby's as managing director, continuing his proven track record of driving innovation and performance in some of the world's top businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome IMD MBA 1999, Mr. Mark Cornell.
Well, if you were never that nice to me before. Ladies and gentlemen, and those of you graduating today, first let me start by thanking you, Ralph, Dominique, the faculty, for inviting me here today to talk to you. It is an extraordinary privilege. Congratulations to those of you who have completed the year, in particular, those of you like me who've had to work extremely hard. I got through the course by the skin of my teeth. Congratulations also to those of you that fundamentally have cruised through the course, because I know many of you will be highly intelligent and probably got through without too much effort. I'm highly envious of you, as I'm sure some of your colleagues are too. But what's important to remember is tomorrow you are all equal, and the market will determine which of you will really cut it and which of you won't. I have a confession to make, and it's probably best that I make that confession now. I feel it's quite appropriate. When I joined the LVMH group, I surprised not only the faculty here, but I think my family and friends that knew me well. I didn't speak any French. Dominic, I can see, is laughing now. And I was not a financier by any stretch of the imagination, albeit I thoroughly enjoyed all the finance classes that were here. The confession is this: LVMH at that time was run by an extremely dynamic American called Mike Woolman. And he decided to put me into a job which was a sort of made-up job, really, which was a bit of strategic development, whatever that meant. I think it was just an excuse for him to have a handbag carrier, essentially. But anyway, I joined, and I started my French lessons on day one, and I sort of followed him around rather sort of lamely from meeting to meeting, not understanding what was being said in French, and frankly not really understanding what was being said in English either. But it was after about a week that he called me into his office, and he said something like this, and I won't attempt an American accent, but he said, "Mark, it's really nice to have you here, to have a sort of normal person here." I don't quite know what that means. And he said, "Thank God you're not one of those sort of shits from some MBA course who are thoroughly pleased with themselves, incredibly smart, etc., etc." He said, "I'm absolutely fed up with those MBA graduates." Cracky, what do I say to this? And here's the confession. I said, "I totally agree, aren't they awful?" So I spent 12 enormously happy years at LVMH, and I don't think anyone knew that I was an MBA, but there we are. Probably just as well. Of course, the implied inference was that I may not have been smart, but he clearly didn't think I was very intelligent either, but there we are. So what does an IMD MBA mean? Well, what is it meant to me. I've always claimed, and will stand by the claim, that for me it was an extraordinary catalyst. As it happens, it was a catalyst out of a very English company that, as it happens, was dealing in very low margin business, into a very international company, a company that was really at the head of its game, was driving innovation, unlike many, many companies, and was winning. And it was a whole new environment. And there is no question, the reason I felt a bit emotional earlier when I talked about coming back here, is that this establishment was that catalyst for me. It has done me no end of good, either from a curiosity perspective, from a confidence perspective, or indeed just from a global cultural perspective. My thinking is different, my approach is different, and I think as an ex-British Army officer, as you've heard, that's quite something. Not many of us change that much, but I have, I think. So it was a catalyst, for sure. I dare say that the vast majority of you have already worked out and have lined up some fabulous jobs to go to. I would just say this for those of you that haven't yet got to that stage. You must not despair, for lots of good reasons. One is that, as I'm sure you're all discovering, finding a job is a job in itself. And it needs absolute dedication, it needs clarity of thought, and it needs something else as well, which is extremely important. It needs an authentic approach. You must really, really understand what it is that you need and that you want, and ultimately what is going to make you happy. Because what you're doing when you're happy, you will always do best. And I'm absolutely convinced of that. And I'm sure in your previous jobs and your previous experiences, you will have understood that too. So that's the first reason. And the second reason I say you have absolutely nothing to worry about at all is that all good companies always need good people. Even during recessions, we were hiring people because we needed to. We always need new, fresh ideas, and I've always been a believer myself in bringing in new talent, young talent, ideally a bit of naive talent to challenge us, to keep us on the front foot, to keep us tested, to keep us thinking. And even companies like LVMH, which was in its heyday, perhaps I shouldn't say that, still in its heyday, I'm sure, but in the certainly 2005 to 2010 era, LVMH had a attrition rate of 12% a year. That was 12% of the workforce turning over, always looking for new talent. So keep at it, and I'm sure that with this particular MBA, you will have no problems at all. The MBA, for me, means a huge amount. From an I&D perspective, I suspect that the conversations still continue along the lines of, if we are so great, and if our faculty is so great, why is I&D's MBA not number one in the world? We used to ask ourselves that question all the time. We also used to ask ourselves the question of, we have such a small alumni base, etc., etc., we can't compete with these INSEAD folk and all the rest. I would say to you, whether or not those debates, those questions are being asked, they are irrelevant to what we now face. Because what I've learned is the I&D brand is a brand that you now are a custodian of, you're fortunate to have on your arm, and that will take you to many good places. It is extraordinarily well known and extraordinarily well recognized. More and more leaders of business today are MBAs themselves, and there is not an MBA in this world that does not hold I&D in the highest respect. And I can tell you that with great experience. So I think you've got a great thing. From my point of view, I've always been slightly maverick. I've always preferred, anyway, to associate myself with something smaller than something bigger. And I've always taken the view that an INSEAD or Harvard MBA is frankly quite common. I'm going to move on now and not dare to give any of you any advice whatsoever, but I thought I might just share with you a few things that have helped me along the way, and a bit of thinking that has helped me along the way, and one or two things that have worked for me. The first thing, as it happens, comes back to exactly what Baba left us with in his good speech. It's all about education and intelligence. It's about keeping on the front foot. From my perspective, I've always done whatever I can to improve. I appreciate there is much more I could do and I should do. But I've made it almost a mantra, thanks to this great place, to keep learning, to keep asking questions, to keep being curious. And I've always demanded that of my teams as well. Whether it's something as simple as reading HBR every month or every quarter or whatever it is, or whether it's just attending seminars, or whether it's getting back on courses and listening to leading edge thinking, I think it's absolutely critical. Not only does it keep me fresh, and I hope at the front, but it also demands that my teams do the same. When it comes to consumer dynamics and indeed client needs, I think it is critical. I'm staggered when I learn today, and I'm sure you're far wiser than I am, because you would have read some very topical case studies and dealt on them. But how is it possible that some of these great brands like Kodak and BlackBerry and Nokia and what have you were so absolutely phenomenal one day, and in some cases like Kodak have virtually disappeared today? How is that possible? It's possible because the management team did not have their finger on the pulse, in my view. The market is always changing. That is not an excuse. One has to keep at the front end on. So I would seriously suggest that doing anything you can as you move forward to keep in touch with this place or similar institutions, but always keeping learning is absolutely key. The second thing I wanted to touch on is almost the one that I found the hardest of all, and that is finding time to think. In a normal daily life, I'm sure for all of us, whatever roles we're leading, actually stopping to think and reflect on what it is that we're trying to achieve is an easy concept, but very hard to put in practice. I've tried all sorts of things. I've asked my assistants to put an hour in my diary every week and to ensure that I think. I don't. I have the hour. I ring Lucy, have a chat, think about the children, recover private emails, bollock a builder. I don't know, some of that stuff. But actually thinking time is really, really important. And very often, when I have managed to find that time, it has, without question, changed my route or changed my thinking positively. What I now do, as it happens, is I've stopped trying to work on aeroplanes. I find that doesn't work very well either. So I now refuse to even take my briefcase on an aeroplane. I simply sit there with a notepad and a pencil and use that time as thinking time. As it happens, it is sort of working. So that's my little tip on that. The next thing I just wanted to talk about was don't underestimate the value of understanding different cultures. Certainly one of the things that I learned most from IMD was about other cultures and how other people think and operate. And I think it can't be in international business ever underestimated how key and important this is. I'll give you a classic example, and if you don't mind, I will use just one or two anecdotal examples as to things that have happened that have helped me learn. I remember once sitting with a man who's called Martin Sorrell, who's the chief executive of WPP, the largest advertising company in the world. He's a charming man, clever man. He used to be the finance director of a company called Saatchi & Saatchi. And he told me that during those days when he was at Saatchi & Saatchi, he went and saw Charles Saatchi and he said to him, Charles, since we won the British Airways account, British Airways has given us each year 10 return air tickets to New York for free as a sort of sweetener on the deal. And we've now been working for them for 2 years and you haven't used a single one of those tickets. And frankly, as the FD, that's rather frustrating. To which Charles Saatchi, I'm embarrassed to say, I'm only embarrassed because I too am English like him, replied, I think it's important that you understand and British Airways understand that I don't need their charity. I'm quite happy to buy my own ticket. What an idiot. So perhaps that's rather English, I don't know. But I can certainly imagine other English people having that sort of attitude, rightly or wrongly, but I can feel it. And those of you that are English, you may know what I mean by that. On the other extreme, I remember sitting at a dinner in New York next to an extremely wealthy lady who was probably one of the most philanthropic ladies in America and also a great art collector. This was before my Sotheby's days, I might say. And it was during my LVMH days. And halfway through dinner, she turned to me in a very sweet but quite patronising way, asked me if I was the boy from LVMH. In fact, more precisely, was I the boy from Louis Vuitton? To which I replied, yes, in words, I suppose I was. And in came the first, quite obvious question. I was walking past the store the other day and I saw this little clutch. And when I went back to look for it again, it had gone. Is there anything you can do to find me that little clutch, Mark? It would be so sweet of you. So, it used to happen every day, by the way, this. Always sort of some aunt's sort of nephew that wanted champagne for his great cousin's wedding or whatever it is. Anyway, so I said to her, of course, we'll find the bag for you. If one of those bags exists somewhere in the world, I'll find it for you and I'll have it sent to your office. Not a problem. And is that the best place for me to send the bill to? And she said, oh, on that point, a little tiny discount would be lovely. Well, that's when I worked out how different the Americans and the English are. You see, getting a deal in America is considered savvy. Correct, Americans? It's savvy. If you got a deal in Britain, you would never tell anyone. But only then, when I realized that from this rather banal example, was I able to go back to my teams and say to them, hey, by the way, if you're not building into your margins enough money for us to be able to discount to these Americans, we're not going to sell any shit. And they went, oh, okay. Simple. But it started working. We started discounting in the right way, and it moved our business. So there's a little example. But I do think understanding culture is critical. Next little point I was going to mention was about confidence. And certainly what this particular course did for me was give me the confidence to ask questions and not feel so stupid in doing so. I learned a little bit about a lot of things, including, first of all, operations, which I still love. And I think what was interesting to me, and it happened only quite recently, probably in the last year, when I was sitting at my desk at Sotheby's in London, and I had spread out on my desk a large spreadsheet, the P&L, the European P&L. And I was going through it as some of you may read a book. I love it. And I was studying it very carefully, looking at all the different lines, trying to understand what stories it was telling me. And I was totally engrossed. And one of our most senior experts in the world of Impressionism and modern art in the world, a really phenomenally dynamic lady, who knows more about that particular subject than I suspect anyone, walked into my office and stood over me and said, oh, she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just looking at the P&L. I'm looking at the numbers. She said, oh, she said, you quite like that sort of marketing stuff as well, don't you? So I said, yeah, no, I love that stuff, yeah. And sort of operations and logistics. And I said, yeah, no, I quite like that stuff as well, yeah. And sort of finance. So I said, yeah, no, I quite enjoy finance. Yeah. And she said, and all those sorts of management things. And I went, yeah, no, I love all those sorts of management things, like organisational behaviour and leadership and all those other topics, etc., etc. And she stood back from my desk and she went, how weird. Well, she didn't have a point, did she? But my point is this, is that, again, thanks to this and thanks to your education over the last year, I think you, like I, now have enough experience in a whole manner of subjects to go out there and ask questions and be curious and take an interest in everyone's roles and really try and understand as business leaders how you can help them do a little better. The last point I was going to touch on really before I wrap up was a point that's very close to my heart, and that's the subject of leadership. And I dare say you've probably thrashed this out for weeks and days and you're probably all incredibly fed up with it as a topic. But for me, it's still a topic that interests me every day. I think one of the great realizations for me coming here again was that I understood for the first time that leaders come in all shapes, sizes and forms. They're not just like General Patton, leading from the front, Leaders should not be thought of as military-type generals. Leaders can be quiet. Leaders can be intelligent. Leaders can be all sorts. But I do think that if there is a common denominator, and it's not natural really to suggest this today, but if there's one common denominator between all the leaders that I've worked for, it is this. They can sell a plan. They can sell a plan. It's terribly important. First, you've got to be able to write it, but if you can't sell it, give up. You've got to be able to know how to sell your own plan. A couple of pointers that I would just say to you that I've picked up over the years from all sorts of different leadership type roles. One is, if you get the opportunity to lead something, however small it is, take it. It is far, far better and far more exciting and far more fun to be leading something, to be number one of something, whatever it is, than to be number two of something huge. And actually the luckiest break that I got was that during my first couple of years at LVMH, I was trying to divest from the group, a cognac company, as Ralph alluded to earlier, called Thomas Hine. Fabulous quality cognac, but I couldn't even sell the company. It wasn't making much money, in fact, any money at all, and we couldn't persuade anyone to buy it. At that point, LVMH very generously asked me if I'd like to be the commercial director of either Moët Chandon or the Hennessy brand, two enormous, great billion-dollar businesses. And whilst those two opportunities were very exciting, I opted to go and run Hine. I think at that point the French thought the British were truly stupid. They couldn't understand it, and I remember Mike Ullman and Monsieur Arnaud and various others saying to me, but why? Why do you want to go and run this shitty company? And my answer was simple, because it would give me the opportunity to run the company, and that's what I wanted. And I strongly suggest to you that now as business leaders, or even before perhaps as business leaders, but certainly now as business leaders, if you get that opportunity to be number one of anything, take it, because you can move the dial. And that's what's important. And that's what I've had most fun in doing in my limited career. The second thing I was just going to talk about on the subject of leadership is that it's taken me quite a while to understand that leadership is not and never has been about popularity. It cannot be. Leadership is about doing the right thing at the right time, which sadly very often means for many people that you're upsetting the norm, whatever the norm may be. And however much we profess to be great change agents, very few of us actually embrace or like change ourselves. But that's one of the great roles of a leader, is to identify what change is required and then drive that change. And that does not come with popularity. The second one starts feeling in a business that you're popular, it probably means you're not doing the right job. And it comes with a price, because not being popular is not anything that any of us would crave. I hate the notion or the concept of being unpopular. But I prefer the notion of being respected for what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to achieve, the bigger game. But it's extremely lonely. And I don't mean that to sound overly dramatic, but leadership is lonely. Not many people talk about that element of leadership. But what you will find in other leaders is they understand that loneliness. So talk to them. Don't bottle it up. Don't talk internally. But if you're having a rough ride of it, and you're feeling uncomfortable, go and find someone who's in a similar or in another leadership position, because they'll know exactly what you're talking about. And talk. And talk and share, because it helps. And it also inspires you to move on and make the next, I hope, correct decision. The last point I just wanted to make on leadership is that, of course, the second you take on a leadership role, you become blind and deaf. You stop seeing things and you stop hearing things. And that is by design, incidentally. People stop talking to you in the same way that they used to. They stop informing you in the same way that they used to. And as you walk around the corridor, suddenly everyone's disappeared because they've bolted into rooms so as not to be seen by you. They got it. It's tricky. So you become blind and you become deaf. But you must not leave it at that. You have to find a tool, whatever it is, to keep yourself close to what is going on in your organisation, so that you truly understand the sentiments, what's happening, what people are thinking, what people are feeling. And people have lots of different ways of doing that. My way, as it happens, is every fortnight I have a breakfast for an hour with 10 or so people from the organisation that have been selected by the human resource team. And it's a great opportunity for me just to listen to what they have to say, try and encourage them to talk, try and encourage them to tell me what's going on, what they're feeling, what the sentiments are. And it's enormously useful. It's not perfect, far from it, but it helps a little bit. So those are just my little pointers, or those are the little things that have worked for me on some of those subjects. I thought I'd just wrap up, and in doing so, share with you a story that happened to me very recently at Sotheby's, and it's also linked to something I believe quite strongly. When I took over, I asked my predecessor what I should do, literally physically do, on the occasions that we have our extraordinarily glamorous and fun sales. An evening sale at Sotheby's, and I'm sure, in fact I know, for reasons you'll understand in a second, at Christie's too, or indeed Phillips and Bonhams and the other great auction houses, is enormously exciting. If you've got the prospect of selling over $300, $400, $500 million worth of art in an evening, through 20 or 30 lots ranging from Picasso's maybe, or Monet to Turner, we saw a wonderful Turner last week, it is incredibly exciting. And in our sale rooms, and if you haven't ever been to a sale room, I would strongly encourage you to go. It's electric, it's really terrifically interesting, the attention is unbelievable. We can sit probably much as we do here, 400, 500, 600 people. And the auctioneer will come in and he'll wrap his hand on the table, the room comes to attention, and everyone's waiting for the first lot. Lots displayed. So I turned to my predecessor and said, well, what do I do? I'm not an auctioneer, I'm just a sort of businessman really. And he said, well, what you do, Mark, is you go and stand up at the front, sort of roughly where Ralph is, and quite close to the auctioneer, so he can look at you if you need to. You can also survey the whole room and just look important. So well, that's me screwed already, because I don't know how to look important, really. I always look miserable. One of the things I have learned in life is it's impossible for me to smile and think at the same time, which is... because I'm always having to think a lot, because I'm generally not on the front of it. I'd walk around looking like a old boot most of the time, but my employees now understand that. So I thought, well, what do I do? So the first time we had a great sale, I sure enough went over to the side of the room and I said hello to our auctioneer and wished him luck and, you know, all that sort of stuff. And I stood there like this. And after about a minute, I felt an utter twerp, really. I wasn't adding any value at all. And I saw that some people over here were having some problems with their seats. So rather embarrassedly, I walked over and I said, hello, sir, how nice of you to come along. Have you got a ticket? Yes, you have. Good, let me show you to your seat. And I started showing people to their seats. And I thought, well, at least I'm doing something. At least I'm sort of contributing somehow. I mean, I may know nothing about art, and I may be a bit weird for liking sort of Bob Collins's lessons and things like that, but at least I'm doing something. I'm helping somehow. Anyway, then rather an attractive lady came over, so I sort of shot over to help her and showed her to her seat, and that was all fine. But I could see all my team standing around the room looking and going, what is he doing? That's our managing director. He's sort of next to me, sort of producing ice creams for people, and, you know. Anyway, I didn't mind them thinking that, to be quite honest, because at the end of the day, if they think I was just doing something to help, then that's what's important. Anyway, the point of the story, which I hope might amuse you, is that the following evening, Christie's had their big sale, and we tend to take it in turns. One evening we go, and the next season they go first, etc., etc. And because I'm highly competitive, I went off to the Christie's sale, because I wanted to see what they were selling. I wanted to see who was in the room, whether there were any of my clients in their room. But I also wanted to see how they did it. Did they do it with more style and panache? Was it more slick? Was it this? Was it that? So I walked into Christie's, and as it happens, I know a few people at Christie's, and of course, as soon as they saw me, they started hissing. You know, what are you doing? Get out. You know, this is not your shop. Anyway, so I very discreetly, because I didn't want to make a sort of scene of it, I walked in, went almost up the sort of back stairs, got myself into the back of the sale room, propped myself up in a corner somewhere, took out my notebook, and I just watched what was going on. Anyway, just before the sale got started, a very nice lady walked up to me and said, hello. Oh, crikey. That's never happened to me before. So I said, hello. And she said, are you going to find me a seat? So I said, she said, well, you're the seating man, aren't you? So, whether or not I am running Sotheby's in Europe, I assure you this, I'm known by most of my clientele as the seating man. And I'm known as that at Christie's too. That suits me just fine. Anyway, so what's next? What's ahead of you all? Well, from my perspective, you've got the world at your feet. And I think you're all extraordinarily fortunate to have got through this year, now to walk out of here with, in my view, the finest MBA you could, and you've got a lot ahead. Don't be frightened to start at the bottom. I did. I will again if I have to. It's a good place to start. It's the best place to learn. If you're any good, you'll work up through the ranks very fast. Let me also suggest that getting to the top is not easy, and it's very, very competitive. I don't know a single business leader, and I suspect you'd agree with me that Babar is a perfect example of what I'm about to say. I don't know anyone that has been hugely successful in business and got to the top that isn't first and foremost a gentleman, a good person. You do not have to be a shit to get to the top. In fact, if you're a shit, you'll get sussed out on the way. You can be a good businessman at the same time as being a nice businessman and an appropriate businessman. And I find one of the hardest things to contend with is the behavior around me. Ralph mentioned very earlier about the moral compass. The moral compass is very important. Keep it in your hand all the time. Two last points. I think you graduates owe IMD something. You're probably still whinging about the fees and this, that, and that. And I haven't been as good a servant to IMD as I should have been, given all the good things it's done for me. But when you have an opportunity to recruit, when you have an opportunity to think about educating yourself or others, I think you should always think about IMD first. Whether or not you're able to do that is a different story, but it should be front of mind, I trust, for the rest of your business career. And last, I would say this. You drive your own destiny. I've worked out there are no such things as magic fairies, and I've had to break the news to my children too. They don't exist. If you're not happy, or it's not working for you, or something's not right, then do something about it to change it. Because it's your destiny, and you can do that. If you sit around waiting for something to do, or to change for you, or someone to help you change, it's not going to happen. Drive your destiny, and above all, hope you have fun. Thanks very much.
I had scripted something else, now I have to improvise. I think that's anyway much better. Now we're moving on. We're moving on to the more ceremonial part of this exercise, so we have to get a little bit more conservative. Max and Guilherme, please join us together with Dominique and members of the faculty for the graduation.
Okay, good morning everyone. I'm going to call your name. It's an honor to call your name. And please come on stage and you will be given your diploma. First, Alarico Allegri. Paolo Alonso. Diego Barreto. Marcelo Bertani. Mangesh Bozale. Elena Bodvina. Gael Candolfi. Dennis Chan. Jack Clark. Nicolas Correnti. Alice Crojas. Daniel. Elena Deritis. Achille Deodato. Gillian Beeson. Carmen Dupont. Ahmed El Shobagi. Atsushi Emoto. Simon Faneco. Luis Fernandez Barrena. Carmine Fiume. Gennady Genov. Andrei Gobet. Konstantin Golotko. Graduating with honors, Pierre Houda. Justin Jameson. Marc-Étienne Yan. Rodrigo Jardín. Juan Jiménez Gerardo. Darshana Zoshi. Paul Keller. Graduating with honors, Anurag Jilani. Moses Kimani. Juan Kop. Aditya Kumar. Christian Kuhn. Graduating with honors, Olivier Laplace. Dimitri Lee. Liz Lee. Fei Lee. Nan Lee. Wen Lee. Henry Liang. Graduating with honors, Torsten Madsen. Carmine Mancusi. Hervé Marcy. Sinisa Matic. Anna Julia McVeigh. Graduating with honors, Fabian Maya. Jordan Minev. Priya Mohan. Yosuke Murai. Anna Nam. Pablo Nieto. Rob, nice. Henry Nobumoto. Yoris Parouks. Beatriz Peloya. Graduating with honors, Andras Pantek. Lara Pierce. Graduating with honors, Thomas Pongras. Nikita Popov. Pek Potibundit. Pasha Pofala. Francis Raymond. Massimo Savella. Lola Sanchez. Ken Sasaki. Axel Schappen. Graduating with honors, Florian Schnappau. María Miguel Serrador. Sergei Schechter. Ashley Silver. Krzysztof Swisiewski. Ozan Talay. Bernardo Tarbes. Satoshi Uchida. Ernst Fellow. Elisa Vlerik. Graduating with honors, Joanne Vosé. Tim Wakeford. Bin Wang. Derek Watson. Sushmita Yadav. Sungo Yon. Liping Yu. Manuel Zafra Solas. Xiaoding Zhu. Theo Zimmermann. Yumna Zogaib. Congratulations to all of you.
Now we have 2 awards that are being given by 2 foundations. The first one is Irina. Introduce the first award. Please, come on stage.
Dear MBA graduates, family, friends, and distinguished guests, I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story about Gillian Welsh and the Welsh Award. The story starts in Australia, well before you were born. Gillian was a teacher who married a teacher, Greg Welsh, in 1971. Gillian was then encouraged to resign. She found this unfair. Why were married women encouraged to stop working, but not married men? Gillian continued teaching, not just in Australia, but also in Canada. After returning to Australia, Gillian obtained a master's degree in international relations and then worked for the first female Labour minister in Australian government. I would like you to imagine the environment that Gillian was working in. Out of 125 members, only 3 were female. Gillian thus strongly experienced the unequal representation of men and women at several stages in her career. When she came to IMD for her MBA degree in 1984, that is 30 years ago, she was one of 12 female participants. The year at IMD was life-changing for Gillian, as it was for me and hopefully for you. Gillian followed a corporate career after IMD. She kept strong bonds and connections with IMD and was determined to promote a higher representation of women, especially among senior managers. Gillian's teaching skills naturally translated into mentorship and were integrated into her leadership style. She believed in knowledge and had a deep understanding within the field and a broad understanding for people. She promoted an environment in which each individual contributed to their strengths. Gillian passed away in 1999 due to cancer, but she didn't want to leave the world without doing something good that would continue after her death. Gillian left behind a legacy with the aim of supporting a female member of MBA class each year for 15 years. The selection criteria were very much aligned with Gillian's character. The award winner should be someone that provides support to every member of the team, thinks team before individual, has very high personal standards, and has a warm heart. In short, this female candidate should be what the Australians call a true all-rounder. Gillian's family, classmates, friends, and IMD followed her legacy and granted Walsh Awards just as Gillian has imagined to 15 amazing women, one of them being here with me today. The 50th award was given in 2012. I would have loved to say that since 1999, the environment has changed so much that the world offers equal opportunities for men and women, and there is no need for promoting women in leadership. For a long time, I wanted to believe that, and I tried to, but simply not the case. The global proportion of senior business roles held by women is 24%. In other words, out of every 4 senior business leaders, only 1 is female. I encourage you to go further and explore beyond statistics. Explore women's stories. At work, I sit facing 2 women. Every day, I see people of all seniority stopping at their desks. It appears they have magic wands that makes people's problems disappear. Clearly, that is why so many people pass by. But actually, is it? If you take the time to look carefully, you will see that more than half of the visits happen not for their problem-solving skills, but because people want to see them. They're clever and create a cheerful atmosphere. They welcome you with an encouraging smile. I'm lucky, as all I have to do is look over the computer screens to see their warm eyes and encouraging smiles. I have been inspired by many women at senior positions, but I wanted to mention these two instead because I also see them as true leaders, even when by title both are just executive assistants. I know these stories, and I'm sure you have women like them around you who are not where they truly belong or where they deserve to be. When Gillian was told to stop teaching, the unequal treatment was obvious. Now it is sometimes much more hidden, but is still very much present. It should therefore come as no surprise that the 15 outstanding women, the 15 Welsh Award winners, decided to keep Gillian's legacy going further. I got the award last year. It's nearly impossible to describe what this award meant to me. It was not an award of achievement, but a very simple recognition, not only that I was okay the way I was, but also that people around me valued me for what I was. That, for me, is the best award ever. I found that the Welsh Award has given me strength to stick to my beliefs and values in the most difficult moments after graduation, and I hope that it will be a source of energy and support also for this year's winner. We expect her to continue Gillian's spirit with us and lead by example. Her responsibilities include sponsoring young women and, most importantly, staying true to the beliefs that bind us. This year's winner has been described as courageous, never biased, and selfless. She prioritized group and class interests over her own, helped her classmates, and won their trust. It is my honor today to represent the Welsh women here with Mariah and announce this year's Welsh Award winner, Lara Pierce.
So we have a second award. Back in 1997, I was in the shoes of Ralph. I was directing the MBA program. And there was a terrific guy called Michael Hepper. Michael Hepper was not only very bright, very talented, he was a musician, he was organizing all kinds of events for the class. And about 3 weeks before graduation, unfortunately, he died in an accident. He was back from the job interview. He ran out of gas on the highway between Vevey and Lausanne. He walked to a gas station, came back, went over, the barrier, but he did not realize it was dark. It was around 11 o'clock, and he did not realize he was over a bridge, and he was like 50 meters above, the ground, and unfortunately, he died, and it was a huge trauma for the class. You can imagine, 3 weeks before graduation, and he had a job, and so the class decided to create a special award in honor of Michael Hepper, and the criteria that were used were actually, again, very similar to what you had for the Welsh Award. A very well-rounded MBA student, very selfness, as you said, and we would like to call for a winner. So the winner this year is Bernardo. what I would like to stress is that this award is not coming from the fact that it's coming from your peers, from your class. So that's probably one of the most precious awards we get. Congratulations. This is Andy. So, let me say a few words on behalf of IMD. First, I'd like the 2014 MBA class to raise. And I would like to say that on behalf of the rector of the University of Lausanne, who co-signed your degree, I officially declare you MBA graduate and proud ambassador of IMD. Thank you very much and congratulations. You may sit down. So it has been a challenging year for you, but I hope an exciting year. But I would like also that we don't forget to thank your spouses, partners, and families, relatives, kids, for all the constraint, the imposition that we have made cause on you by taking your MBA candidate away from you to participate in this challenging program. So we thank you, understand, and really appreciate your hardship. I think they deserve a hand. But I would like to thank also Ralph. If it has been a very tough, challenging year for you, he has worked also very hard together with the team, so I think he deserves also. So congratulations again, and I was extremely pleased to hear Mark Cornell because he was here in your shoes a few years ago. I remember I was the director of the program at that time, and for a professor there is nothing better than to see people making such a great impact on society, and I think you're a great example, and I really appreciate also what you said to me, as the whole audience, I'm sure. And actually, I'm going to repeat a couple of things. We didn't exchange our thoughts, but I would like you to think about what this program will do for you. And of course, you have learned a lot of new tools, new concepts that will make you great leaders, great managers. But what is important also is to understand what this program will do for you 5, 10 years, 20 years after graduation. And I think that, even though we didn't talk to each other, I'm going to emphasize a couple of things which I think you highlighted better than me, actually. So the first thing is, I believe, the importance of being truly responsible leaders. During the CEO Roundtable, some of you actually attended the CEO Roundtable. There was a poster on the wall. I don't know if you paid too much attention to that, but it was about some interesting data, actually some disturbing data. To the question, how much does the public really trust among diverse constituencies? Business leaders rank 38%. It's down from 50% 2 years ago. And government officials were last with 29%. These are disturbing numbers. Hopefully, academics rank top at 68%, so we look good. So there are certainly differences among countries, but since part of our job at IMD is to develop your critical thinking, I'm sure some of you may wonder, what's a methodology, how does it run? And so I think that one of the major reasons given for the lack of trust in the business is a perception from the public that business executives do not demonstrate responsible leadership. And I'm not talking just about business leadership, I'm also talking about government leadership. Our world today seems to be more and more about greed and not enough about social fairness, responsibility. Look at what has been going on recently in Spain. I don't know if you follow the emergence of this political party, Podemos, that has come up from nowhere and in 6 months has become probably the most popular party. And basically, these new political parties that we have seen in Spain, but also in the rest of Europe, are getting huge popularity because citizens are increasingly delusionized with politicians and the corruption that link them to some unscrupulous business people. So these are very bad news. And sometimes we, the business school, are being held responsible for creating greedy business people. And I hope that this is not what we have done. I hope that the education you have received at IMD will take you through the right path. This being said, natural talent, intelligence, a great education, none of these guarantees success. Something else is needed, and it's the sensibility to be responsible towards society at large and to touch, as Mark said before, the hearts and minds of people who are working with you. So I hope that you will remember that education and responsible leadership is never, an ending process. It's a never-ending process. You have to learn to grow. You have to learn what to grow forward, learn what is good and what is bad, learning what is desirable and undesirable, learning what to choose and what not to choose. So these are the big issues in life. It's not just the Excel spreadsheet and, how do we call that, the management things? Leadership begins and ends with authenticity, not style, not title. Leadership is not about status. It's about responsibilities and about doing the right thing, as Mark said again, for others. It's all about being yourself at your best. So this leads me to my second point, and the second point is about the increasing critical importance of personal value. Personal values become more and more important as you reach the top. Yes, the world is very competitive, and when you reach the top, all people are smart, all have demonstrated successes, leadership, great communication skill, and again, what is going to make the difference at the top is not to be a nice guy, as you said, it's important, but the personal value become absolutely key to leadership. As I've personally observed, too many people see leadership as some kind of religious holiness. The big boss decide and things happen. Well, let me tell you from experience, especially running an academic institution, this does not happen. Leadership happens by touching the heart and mind of people. When Martin Luther King gave his famous speech in 1963, 250,000 people showed up on that day. And remember, back in 1963, there was no email, no Facebook, no social media. And he gave a speech called I Had a Dream, not I Had a Plan. You said you have to know how to sell a plan. To sell a dream is even better. And by the way, I guess that these 250,000 people who showed up in Washington on that day did not just show up for him. They show up for themselves. So think about this question again. What do you believe in and how do you communicate, the answer to this question? It's not so trivial. Finally, let me emphasize the attitude of developing and keeping a curious mind. We heard it from you, Sayed Baba Ali and Mark. That's the attitude that allows yourself to learn continuously. And as we all know, in the years to come, the acceleration of new knowledge creation and diffusion will be even more dramatic than what we have witnessed over the last 20, 30 years. Therefore, the need to keep an open mind and the very significance of expressions such as learning how to unlearn, learning how to learn, lifelong learning, these are also very critical for your future. Curiosity about life, in all its aspects, is still, I believe, the big secret of great creative people. Curiosity is really the clay from which all knowledge is formed. And curiosity is one of the most permanent and certain characteristics of a vigorous intellect. We have done some research last year at IMD, and we have found that 25% of our alumni come back within 5 years. That's great. But there is one exception, our MBAs. I know that some of you have sold a house, a car, a private jet, and invested heavily in a top education, and now you believe that you have been educated for life. Don't make that mistake. Always be open to learn in this very competitive environment. Your education, the education of your children, will make all the difference. And you can only learn if you keep a curious mind. So as Lord Dewar used to say, minds are like parachutes. They only function when they are open. So here at IMD, the whole heart of pedagogy is the art of awakening the natural curiosity of young minds like yours for the purpose of satisfying it afterward. So I feel very confident that with these 3 principles, being a responsible leader, not being shy to have strong belief and to share them as much as you can, and also by nurturing a curious and open mind, you will succeed in life. All the full education you receive at IMD, you are now fully prepared to be successful and to make a positive impact on other people's lives. Thank you very much for your attention, and very best wishes of success to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. And now, last but not least, we have the speaker of the MBA class 2014, Diego, come up and deliver the speech.
I hope we don't have feedback session after this. My dear friends, partners, guests from around the world, IMD faculty and staff, it's an honor for me to speak on behalf of the 2014 IMD MBA class. And first, I would like to say a special thanks for all friends and families that haven't taken the effort of being here today. It means a lot to us. I would like to ask each of you to look to your beloved host. To be sure, you are now looking to a different person. Here, we were prepared to be courageous. We were prepared to be courageous enough to abandon the past that made us successful. We are not the same anymore. And now we have a different role in our society. To whom much is given, much is expected in return. This year, I learned a lot from people. But it actually started 2 years ago with my grandpa, who taught me 5 key elements to get the most out of life. It was not until this year that I realized how much impactful that 5 key elements could be. Everything started on June 2nd, 2012, which was one of the most important days of my life. That day, 300 people traveled long distance to meet me including my grandpa. It was a very, very special day. After 1 hour and a half waiting, finally, the most important people that appeared in my life during the last 10 years appeared to say yes. My wedding was incredible. For 12 hours, our close friends and family celebrated us and made that day probably the most special ever. However, one thing called my attention. Every single person who looked for me to congratulate us mentioned, "Your grandpa is amazing. Where does he find so much energy? Your grandpa is the best." Of course, I know my grandpa very well. For 15 years in my life, I spent every single Saturday on his farm. Only him and me. It was just about us, living the life together. He never raised his voice. I had my own nickname that only he used. He was a real grandpa, like the ones we watch in movies. Still, after so many comments, I started to observe him and seeing him in a new light. So, what was special that night? He was incredible. At 8 years old, he was dancing like an 18-year-old boy. He did not care about his peers. He was just having fun. He was having fun, enjoying life, enjoying Leila, enjoying me, enjoying himself. It was a clear and pure invitation to life. After the wedding, I told my grandpa, "I know you better than anyone. But only today I realized that your energy and your willingness to live as I have never seen anybody doing. How come?" He looked at me, he touched me, and he said, I'm the same I was when I was at your age. While people get older, I just get more experience." He remembered Douglas Copeland, the Canadian novelist, who said that when you are young, you always feel that life hasn't yet begun. This life, we believe, is gonna start next week, next month, next year, after the holidays, whenever. Then, suddenly you are old and the scheduled life didn't arrive and you ask yourself, what happened? How did I end up this way? At this point, my grandpa stared at me and said, I will never ask this question to myself. The party isn't over yet. The party is over only when the band stops playing. And the band is still going strong. Those words struck me hard. After this conversation, I got interested about the topic and I started an incessant search for the formula. During the journey, I found John Gardner, one of the most well-known professors of leadership. In his speech about personal renewal, he said that we all have seen very fortunate women and men, even ones in fortunate circumstances, running out of steam at a certain point in life. Perhaps life just presented them with tougher problems than they could solve. Perhaps something inflicted a major wound on their confidence and self-esteem. Perhaps they were pulled down by the hidden resentments and grievances that grow in adult life. On the other hand, maybe they just run so hard for so long that somewhere along the line they forgot what is what about. Finally, my experience at IMD helped me to close this understanding. I saw people facing challenges in front of them. Challenges that could easily stop them, but they chose to fight against the unforeseen. If you know Inumna, you know a great example. When she least expected some turbulence, life set a challenge to test her courage and willingness to keep going. Again. At such moment, for someone like her, there was no point in pretending that nothing has happened, or in saying that she was not prepared for that. The challenge would not wait. Life would not look back. Here she is. Do you remember Yuna without that big and beautiful smile? No. She just taught us that happiness is not the absence of problems. Happiness is the ability to deal with them. From my reflections, I found a common ground among my grandpa, John Gardner, and my experience at IMD. They connect the 5 elements: learning, growing, enjoying, daring, and loving. These all elements need to live a full, and you need these 5 elements to live a full and happy life. And this is exactly what I think IMD showed to us this year. In my opinion, this was about understanding these factors. The combination of them allowed us to become very different from January. Think about all collective and individual accomplishments this year. How many times in our lives we reach so many outcomes in 1 year? How many times did we think we were capable to learn some topics or change as a person? We arrived here with strong convictions about life, directions, personalities, points of view. In a few weeks, IMD started to massage us, to make us soft, and little by little open our minds to learn, to grow, to enjoy, to dare, and to love. Let me show what I mean. I will talk about these 5 factors using some examples I saw this year. I hope some of you enjoy the fact that we were able to be a reference when I think about these things. You were not unique doing that, because the whole class did. But for sure, you were remarkable. Let me start with learning, looking back to January. Everybody was excited. Everything was following the natural flow, until a tiny and shy person stepped on the stage. At first, the thin voice was weak. Suddenly, strong and straight words started to fly around and put us against the wall for the first time. After explaining her 5-year period at a large corporation and a financial institution, she said, as Chinese cities rapidly develop, millions of people are being left behind. Children as young as 10 are dropping out to farm or to work in factories. If education is the key to escaping poverty, then there are 200 million children in China facing daunting, if not impossible odds. I don't deny my intention to be a successful businesswoman. However, my role in the society is much larger than this. During 3 years, I dedicated myself to ensure that one day, every child enjoys access to a quality education. And you, she asked me, if you consider yourself a leader, where's your courage to dedicate just a few years of your life to do something different for the world? For many of us, the learning process about ourselves started that day. Our concepts of leadership, our concepts of our roles in our society. And on top of that, we were learning about faith and how to be more human. Another one of you was empathic about learning and improving yourself, which is to say, growing. On May 11th, I had the most enjoyable dinner of this year. We were in the peak of IMD workload, and a homemade dinner shared by 6 people during the end of a beautiful day was exactly what we need to relax. For 1 hour and a half, our host was just working and let us feel relaxed. However, at a certain point in time, he stopped cooking and just joined us. Once he sat down, he was received with one question. Hey, why are you doing it? Why are you here? Unconsciously, our brains prepared to listen the most common answers, which are related to career service, which are related to jobs, which are related to leadership skills, and etc. But the first 4 words were balancing our instinctive reaction. To change my country. That was the answer. From that, it was a class. A real professor is stepping in and showing the real value of personal and professional growth. I listened during 15 minutes, a dreamer looking for growth. He started saying that a few years ago, he and 3 friends with common values and dreams sat down and started to brainstorm. Youth, full of energy and without any mental constraints that sometimes we accept, he started to explain the plan. They grew in an environment where their country appeared as one of the new winners in the new economic chess game. After decades suffering with catastrophe and domination by a foreign, their country rose from the ashes and showed the world that things were changing. However, in the 90s, their economy lost steam and together part of their confidence. Inspired by the necessity to shape the future of their country, 4 friends took a decision. They defined 4 different paths that each of them would follow. After growing, they would rejoin to work for their country. However, 4 different Japanese will be back with different mindsets. Together, they will try to change their country. A dream? Well, is it really possible to grow more than the average without dreaming? That night, he changed my way to understand growth. Patience to accept the long-term view. Strength to surpass barriers. Commitment to think big. Engagement to lead and to be led. This year was a year of growth, and Satoshi for sure was one of my professors. But how could we survive the year without turning our attention from learning and growing? And why do we always think being professional as being so serious? What is the point of having life so straight and black or white? Why do we sometimes try to be older than we really are? This year was a clear example of how joy is an important factor to let us be more innovative, to renew our strengths, and to build a good environment to people and to lead them. I like to think about 2 very special persons. During 1 year, I have never seen them angry or sad. Anytime. They show us that enjoying life depends much more on our attitude than on our circumstance. To enjoy ourselves, we don't need anything other than the will to do so. After all, the outer details of life are nearly the whole picture. Our inner thoughts are what ultimately control whether or not we are enjoying ourselves. How many times did he reach at us to say, hey, I have an amazing idea. And then he just do it. What was behind it? Enjoyment, leading, innovation, and execution. For those who know the Moonlight event, you know what I'm talking about. And she's the person that showed how the details in life could be the best way to find happiness and make our day. Once, in a very special day, she told me, choose to bring the power of enjoyment to all areas of your life. You will be more creative, more pleasant to be around, more positive, more resourceful when you're enjoying life. Wherever you may find yourself, whatever you may be doing, find some aspect to value, to appreciate, to enjoy. During this year, they were trying to tell us something about life, maybe giving some insights between black and white. They taught us to figure out for ourselves what makes us happy, no matter how crazy it might sound to some people. The best thing Francis and Lola have ever done for us is to help us to take the life less seriously and succeed. As she used it to say, it's only life after all, right? But it's impossible to enjoy without daring. How good is to dare? I once heard, you got a dream, you got to protect it. When people can't do something themselves, they want to tell you, you can't do. If you want something, go get it. How many of us came to IMD to be more courageous? How many of us came to IMD to learn how to dare? Being daring demands courage, demands vision, demands passion. It's not inherently about morality, it's about having meaning in life. While there are people who are naturally daring, the rest of us need to overcome the burdens of it in order to successfully lead changes while keeping our sanity. The American president, Henry Truman, had a famous sign on his desk: "The buck stops here." This year, I've watched the saga of two persons who taught us how to dare. They constantly fought for what they believe in. For them, it isn't about being right or wrong. It's about having the courage to dare. Watching them in our class, we learned that for all sorts of people who dare, the buck not only stops with them, but also means that they will carry it as a burden. No other position in life carries as much responsibility, weight, triumph, stress, and excitement as someone who dares. Some burdens, I'm sure, we handle well, while others push us to the limits of our experience, putting into question our resolve to carry on. The problem of daring is the fight. Fighting for our passion for daring can force us into isolation. We may not realize it, but it definitely happens. The depth of this isolation entirely depends on how we deal with bad news and constructive criticism. The more we shoot the messenger or lash out the critics, the deeper the isolation will become. These two people become an example of people who dare. They show us to not be afraid to fail. They can't always win, but the challenge they show us not to be afraid to fail, that we can't always win, that the challenge can feel larger than life, but they dared us to see that there are things in life worth fighting for. They show us that we have to believe that things can be different. Ashley and Carmen taught us that we don't have other option. We have to dare. And what is daring without caring? Loving is so inspiring, motivating, and important. It's astonishing how some people can contradict the generally accepted rules of our society and show us that movie-like stories can happen in real life. How many of us came to IMD dreaming about a new industry, a new position, or a new geography? We work hard to be accepted here, to connect with the right people, to choose the right employer. During this process, we were guided to find what we really like, what will really push us beyond our limits. This process was a continuous search for what we love. Our psychoanalysts, coaches, mentors, leadership professors help us to identify what we love. Many of us realized that what we love need to help us to take the main decisions during this year. I want to pick here one story that stands as an example for many in our class about how love shapes our life. While we arrived here full of doubts and searching for what we love, he arrived here with one certainty: his love. Knowing since the beginning what drives him, his behavior was impeccable. With a poker face, straightforward communication, he never seemed to doubt what he wanted. Polemics, daydreams, and the lure of well-recognized company names had zero influence on his path. No distractions at all. But his love was not for a specific function or company. What drove him was a woman. During our first networking session, he said clear and loud, "Does anyone has contact in Finland?" All of us laughed, interpreting that as a joke. It was not. It was only Paul's love. giving him clear instructions about what he needed to reach his envisioned future with his partner. Without discovering our love, we could not go as far as we did here. We could not go as far as we did here this year. Love doesn't make the world go around, but love definitely makes the ride worthwhile. And for us and Paul, 2014 was worthwhile because we found our loves. All these factors combined made us unbeatable this year. By learning, growing, enjoying, daring, and loving, we achieved everything. We dared innumerous CEOs, no fear. We presented to hundreds of executives. What was the problem? None. We MBA candidates, we brought almost 100 executives here to Lausanne to talk to us. How? Just doing. We travel around the planet to convince the largest companies in the world about our ideas, and they bought it. We slept 5 to 6 hours per day in a row during the next 6 months. Tired? For sure. Lack of energy? Never. One of the persons for whom I fell in love this year, Lara, introduced me to Marianne Williamson, who wrote that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant? Who am I to be gorgeous, talented, and famous? Actually, I ask, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. And I will repeat this special phrase. Your, mine, playing small does not serve the world. We are not here to become leaders. We are leaders already. We proved it this year. After all achievements, do we have the right to believe we cannot play big? No. I don't care about what does mean play big for you. I don't care the meaning of success for you. What we cannot do is to ignore the limitlessness of our potential. People are waiting for us to build a better life, to build a better future. Now, it's our responsibility to carry forward this momentum of this tremendous year. It's our responsibility to continue to learn, to grow, to enjoy, to dare, and to love. We are women and men who are prepared not to be comfortable for the predictability of yesterday, but for the realities of today and all those unknown possibilities of tomorrow. Great leaders dare to be different. They don't just talk about risk-taking. They actually do it. We proved ourselves we can change everything. So what comes next? We're going to apply all these factors that we learned here this year. We have just one option. Our friends, our families that are here today, they did not travel to celebrate a diploma. I'm sure they are here to look into your eyes and ask, what comes next? This year, on September 13th, the band stopped playing. The party was over. I lost my grandpa. I wish you were here today to hear me. I would tell him, I will start to work my plan to help Brazil through politics. That I will work hard to make my case appealing to the Brazilian government. That I don't care about parties. I will build my network, exposing my knowledge, and showing how someone like me can be important to the Brazilian government. It can take more than 10 years, maybe 20, but I know how to do it. My dear classmates, I will learn how to navigate in the public sector. I will grow my knowledge about public policies. I will enjoy the whole journey. I will dare the current system. I will continue to love my country and myself. I would like to finish this speech by asking something to you. What is your challenge? Your friends and your family are waiting for this answer. Think big. Your playing small does not at all serve the world. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to conclude the formal part of the ceremony now. A lot of interesting things have been said, a lot of experience has been shared. I don't know why I'm saying this right now, I just thought about it while I was sitting there. When I came here, I was your age. I was the youngest faculty they've ever hired. I was more edgy than I'm now. Some of my older colleagues probably remember this. And I remember only one thing that I'd like to share with you. A late faculty colleague of ours, Werner Köttelhön, asked me one afternoon the question, how many years are between 30 and 40? And I thought that must have been a trick. How many years are between 30 and 40? And I said, well, I guess about 10 years, more or less. And he said, no. He said, 2 years. Now I experience actually it's 4 months. You're now entering a period of your life, it's going to be extremely fast because like Diego said, you're going to move ahead and you build your life, you build your story. Life is going to be very, very fast. Time is precious. And that's actually the most important thing that you have to manage. So take your time, manage it well. Thank you very much. The MBAs have to leave first, that's the tradition, and we meet all outside. Thank you. We have a gift. Oops.